This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Welcome to Uncorking a Story, the podcast that introduces you to the rich world of storytellers who share their personal journeys, creative processes, and the stories behind their stories, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and I'm thrilled to be part of your writing journey. If you're an aspiring writer, a literary enthusiast, or simply someone who believes in the transformative power of words, you've come to the right place. Every week, we'll pop the cork on the world of successful storytellers and give you a healthy pour of inspiration, insight, and empowerment. My mission is to help writers like you realize your full potential through the transformative and therapeutic power of writing. Whether you're just starting your literary voyage or looking to refine your craft, I'm here to provide you with the knowledge, inspiration, and encouragement you need to embark on your own storytelling adventure. So, are you ready to uncork your story and let your creativity flow? Uncorking a Story is about to begin. Sit back, relax, and let the transformative magic of storytelling whisk you away. Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Holly LaBarbera received her MA in Counseling Psychology from Santa Clara University, where she currently teaches as an adjunct professor and runs her own psychotherapy practice. She joins me today on Uncorking a Story to discuss her latest book, All I Know. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Holly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to have you here, Holly, and I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think writing-wise, my story is kind of letter writing is actually where I started writing, which there's letters that happen in the book. And part of that is because I was pen pals with my grandma all my life, and I have been pen pals with friends even past the point where normal people do that. And I love that. I had never written a story per se until 2015 or so is when my children were getting ready to leave for college, varying stages of that, and I just felt this kind of gaping hole inside myself and needed to fill that with kind of new people that I decided to just make up. And so I started writing, and then kind of went to some workshops and connected with people. And I mean, I can say more about that, but basically it just kind of started pouring out of me at that point. And it's been a great journey since then.
I can't let the pen pal with grandma thing go, because I was the same way when I was a kid. And in fact, my parents found a few years ago a bunch of letters that I had written to my grandmother when I was, 4 or 5 years old. One of them actually had a dollar bill in it, so I sent her a dollar bill, and the dollar bill is actually was printed in 1978, because it has the year of the minting or whatever. So is this 1978? I sent her a dollar because she wasn't feeling well, so I sent her a get well. My mother sent her a get well card. She had me sign it, and then I snuck a dollar in it because my grandmother would always send me like a dollar if I was never feeling well. She got the biggest kick out of it. But it's funny that you mentioned it, because I have that dollar right here. I keep it in, well, actually, I'm lying. I have it somewhere. Oh, it's right here. I have my passport wallet on my desk, and I keep it in my passport wallet because it's that special to me. So I know I'll never lose it. So it's right there. Not that you could see it in front of my screen, but I'll just hold it.
No,
up
I
there.
got you.
There
Yeah.
it is, yeah. So it was, so anyway, and then all these letters that I had, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes when I was like rereading them. I'm like, oh my gosh. That was incredibly.
It's funny. I have a bunch that my grandma wrote me, and then after she passed, my mom similarly went through some of her stuff, and my mom was reading me some of the letters she found that I wrote my grandma, and there were some from like the ones she read were like I was probably 12, 13, like middle school age, and I was writing to her about the boys I liked and all my friend drama, and I'm like, that's so funny. I can just imagine being my grandma reading this, and just funny. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I want to dig into a little bit too about your career as a therapist, because I'm sure I'm going to assume here, but just knowing what I know about your book, there's definitely an overlap. What drew you to that as a profession?
Therapy. I think I've always been kind of a my friend's therapist and my family, just a helper, listener person. And oh gosh, I don't know the year, but I guess late 30s, I had a family member that was struggling with a serious mental health illness. And I was one of the point people kind of helping out with that. And it just kind of sparked me to say, this is actually a good profession for me. As horrible as that was, it also just really appealed to me to be able to help in a more formal way. And I learned a lot about it as they were going through it. And so I just felt like I could apply that and be helpful. And so I did. And I've loved well, I guess I shouldn't say every second. I definitely don't love every second, but I do love the people I meet and watching their journeys, and it's kind of walking along that path with them. It's an honor for me, and it's very fulfilling.
Yeah. And it strikes me that, you were going through this, very sad and emotionally, I'm sure, difficult time with this family member. Yet it opened a door, for you in terms of like showing you something maybe that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So it's like one
Yeah.
of those things, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And this was certainly, and maybe an unintended gift for, as a result of that.
Yeah, I think there's like silver linings are like that. It doesn't make it good or worth it even, but it brings something out. And so I am appreciative of that. And um I think I've been able to hopefully help other people along with my family members. So yeah.
Yeah, very neat. So,
And yeah, it shows up in the book. I'm sure that's what you were going to get at too. It does. A lot of those experiences show up in the book.
yeah, well, let's talk about the book, and sort of draw a through line for me from writing letters, to your grandmother, to becoming a therapist, to now becoming a published author.
Mhm.
What's the through line there?
Well, I think for one thing, I just always have been attracted to story of all different forms. I am a huge reader. I read a ton, and which is something my grandma started for me too, with the love of reading. But so I think I've just been attracted to stories, whether that's listening to other people tell me their stories or coming up with them myself or writing to my grandma about my stories. Um, and so I think when I just opened up and allowed for writing to this story to kind of start coming out of me, it just was there and just kind of flowed. I've been saying to people that the first draft process has been super easy for me. I have a couple books written, and the first draft just kind of flows pretty quickly and easily, but then the revising and the editing and all of that is just um, much harder and longer and takes more time. So,
Yeah, to me, that's the work of it all, right? So there's the love of it, which is writing and crafting the story, and then
mhm,
there's the okay, well now somebody's telling me how to make it better, and then it becomes work, right? The revisions and the suggestions, and hopefully we have good editors who partner with us, on those things and can guide us. And it always is good to have like third party feedback
mhm.
as you're going through
I've
it.
been since I went to a community of writer workshop in 2018 and connected with a number of very good writers there that kind of one group that's a little informal writing group, and then another that's a very formal writing group that we meet periodically. And both all of those people have really been great beta readers and giving me a lot of sometimes brutally honest feedback, but I appreciate that because you're not going to get better if you don't get good criticism. So, and a lot of that I take, and some of it I'm like, no, I like it my way better. So, but yeah, I think it's important to get outside feedback, but then also kind of check in with your gut as to whether that is actually the story you're trying to tell or not.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's talk about the story you're trying to tell in All I Know. What is the story?
Right. Well, story of a young woman who's overcoming childhood trauma and tragedy. trying to build a life with this boy she's always loved. So there's a through story, kind of a fulcrum point love story. And that's kind of how I envisioned the book when I started writing it, was this love story between Kai and Josh. And then as I went forward with it, it became clear that it was really more Kai's story and Josh was like a part of it. And then the deeper I went into it, it also became clear that it was Kai's relationships with a bunch of other people. And so I used the book to kind of explore a lot of different love relationships within families, among friends, learning to love yourself or not. And so kind of how all those experiences of love bring someone to who they are and how they move through the world.
Yeah.
So,
What I love about that is, you mentioned that, when you first sat down to start thinking about this, you were thinking of it being one way, but you
mhm,
allowed yourself the ability to pivot and let the story kind of come to life on its own,
mhm.
and being able to pivot and, write the story as it's presenting itself to you. I think there's a lesson there for other authors. You don't have to be handcuffed by your original ideas.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Um, it's kind of, a unique experience as a creative person to um have these characters like living in your head. And I'm kind of like, okay, like Kai's talking to me and telling me what's happening to her. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's not what I thought was going to happen. But there it is. It happened. And I wrote it down. And am I going to keep that? Am I not going to keep that? But it does have that feeling of, I talk about like Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic talks about that, like just that feeling of inspiration and the story kind of whispering to you and allowing that to move through you kind of, which is how I experienced the first draft, which is why the first draft is kind of fun and magical. Um,
Yeah, that's really cool. So it's almost like it's coming through you. I mean, is it coming through you from an outside source? Is it subconscious, or what is it?
yeah, I think it has to be subconscious. I mean, I don't, unless they're real people in some other universe, which I don't actually think. So no, I'm sure, it's subconscious. It's because it's once it's been out there in the world, people who know me have read it and been identified things about my personal story that I didn't really identify when I was writing it. I wasn't actively putting myself or people I knew into it, but then other people see that and I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. So obviously that's subconscious coming through.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's
there are
almost
parts of the book that were very consciously done. Like a lot of the settings in the book are very consciously mine. But the things that happened and the people I didn't realize were people I knew.
interesting. Yeah. Do you ever use writing as a form of therapy for your clients?
I do, and for myself personally, but I journal. I suggest journaling to my clients as a therapeutic intervention. I also, um, in the book, I toy with this, and I've done this with people too, is like writing letters therapeutically that you may or may not end up sending to a person, but um, writing letters to someone else, writing letters to a different version of yourself. It's a way to process grief or unfinished business of some sort. So, yeah, I think writing can be very helpful in therapy.
It's also not lost on me that we have the same Stanley, I think.
Ah,
Um,
that's funny. I have my little all I know sticker on mine, but yes,
yes, very cool. Although mine is empty, which I should have rectified before starting this conversation, but I'm just gonna have to be dehydrated as we continue on here. One of the things that I am I've had a lot of, interestingly, a lot of lawyers on the show who become authors, but a fair amount of psychologists, LCSWs, who have turned to fiction as well. And something can be helpful to a reader, like, not that this is a self-help book, but you can disguise a little bit of self-help in fiction. Do you think that's a fair statement?
definitely. I'm trying to think of Lisa Crone, I think it is, who wrote Story Genius. I'm pretty sure I might be getting the name and author wrong, but it's something like that. Anyway, she writes about um stories just historically, like the whole purpose of story was somewhat educational, like learning about relationships, learning about the world, learning about, other people. And so I think that, not that stories are always educational or need to be, but I think there is a resonance that comes with stories around, like for me in this book, I was very conscious of trying to, there's a lot of very stigmatizing stories with mental health issues, that make things worse, as far as like people being crazy and that's scary and they're dangerous, or whatever it happens to be. And just trying to present a more rounded sense of what it's like for someone struggling with depression and grief and trauma, and also what it's like for their family members to be going through that alongside them, to try to help people not feel alone in it if they're struggling in those ways, but also for people who haven't, which I think are few, but to at least get a sense of a more honest representation of that. And I think there's been a lot of great books that do that, and I wanted to provide that as well, or contribute to that kind of, in my head, I'm calling it psychological fiction, as far like as it, along with historical fiction, which is like clearly fiction, but telling you something about a certain time period. And I kind of see my book that way, like it's clearly fiction, but it's also themes that are real and that I've seen in my practice and in my actual life. So
Yeah, it's also a way to make, some people who have, historically been unheard feel heard and feel seen.
absolutely.
Those people with invisible disabilities.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, the book, there is a lot of difficult things in the book. There is addiction, there is abuse, there is these traumas and things that happen that are very, I don't think the book is ever dark, but they're difficult. They're definitely struggle type things. And yet my intention was to keep the book very hopeful and uplifting, and there's parts I think are really funny. There's parts that are pretty sexy. So I try to just kind of include a lot. So I'm talking about it like it's this super heavy read, but I hope it doesn't come across that way for the entirety of the book.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a balanced narrative.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, what was your approach to getting this published?
Well, that was my approach was trying to get it traditionally published for a very, very, very long time. I sent out, I don't know, over 50, 60, 70 queries to agents and different people to publish it, with no success. So I researched some different self-publishing options. I was almost working with a hybrid publisher. So anyway, it just came to be that I ended up self-publishing with a little bit of help from a company that helps with that, which they were great. And mostly, I think that the upside of it, I mean, I would have gone the other route if someone said yes. So let's not joke about that. But the upside of doing it myself was I hired my cover designer. I love my cover. People wanted me to change the title. I love the title. I didn't want to change the title. So it's entirely mine, and I love that. And we'll see what happens. But yeah. So it was kind of I could let the rejections define me and give up on it, or I could just take matters into my own hands, which tends to be my MO, is to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're at a point now where you can do it, and it looks beautiful. I mean, it really does look beautiful on the shelf, and everything is super professional about it. And I'm curious, you mentioned having some other books in you. What are some of the big lessons you've learned? Because I know that the learning curve is very steep for the first one. What are some big lessons you've learned this first time around that you're going to take into your future work?
Yeah. Well, I think one lesson is that self-publishing doesn't have to be like a kind of runner-up prize. I mean, it's a valid option if you want to do it that way. And I feel very proud of the book, regardless of whether it was traditionally published or not. Another lesson is that it's not a really a financial gain to publish a book this way. So if I mean, I would still attempt to do traditional publishing just to make some money on it, because I don't know that that's happening with this book. But also I think I'm learning about, I'm learning how to talk about the book. I'm learning how to kind of embrace, it's this whole, I mean, I talk about shame a lot with my clients, and this whole like imposter syndrome, and you don't, you want to be humble, but also honor your strengths or whatever. And so it's been a challenging thing to tell people I wrote a book and present it to them and talk about it. And so I think I've learned to do that more comfortably, and kind of just doesn't make me a better person than anyone, but I'm proud of what I did here, and I get to be like that. So
yeah, it does require a fair amount of vulnerability to do it. I mean, to write it, number one, because and you referenced it before, whether or not you know it, you are putting yourself on the page. You are revealing things about yourself in the story. But also when it comes to promoting it, many authors I know, and I'm a recovering introvert, but it's like, may have some more introverted tendencies, and to continually go on to podcasts and to do appearances and signings, you're getting a lot of that spotlight on you, and you've got to learn how to be comfortable with it and how to actually enjoy it, which is not always easy as well.
Yeah, I think I have an advantage because I am more of an extrovert for sure than a lot of authors that I meet. And so I don't mind talking to people or talking in front of people, but it's different to talk to people about something else, and rather than this thing that is all me, and yeah, even though I don't see it as, it's still, I created it, I put it out there. If people hate it, it's buck stops here, like this is mine. And so to go out, yes, there is definitely a vulnerability, and putting yourself out there in that way is very scary. But it also builds up, I think, strength or whatever to go out there and do it anyway. Even, I mean, that is courage, right? Being scared and doing it anyway. And so I'm trying to model that for myself and my kids and whoever. Like, yeah, it's a scary thing, but it matters to do it anyway, I think.
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier, you're not doing it for the money. And even in the traditionally published realm, you really can't be doing it for the money either, because, most authors are not making a livable income. Everyone has second jobs, and writing almost is the side hustle until you get to a point where, you're selling, millions of copies. But that's, that's certainly typically not the first one out of the gate.
Yeah. Well, and I think I a little overcame that when I became a therapist, because you can't really be in this for the money either. Although it does pay the bills, and writing it, I don't, it's a long way off for that writing would ever pay the bills. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
You have to do it because you're called to do it, kind of thing.
But and you clearly were called to becoming a therapist and a novelist. But you could also use it as a calling card for speaking engagements, I imagine. And there's other ways in which you can leverage, the output of a book.
Yeah.
So
yes, that's true.
Well, I'm always like to get to know my guests a little bit more by asking a couple of random pop culture questions. Of course, they're random to you, not so random to me. So I'm curious, Holly, when you were younger, when you were a kid, what were your favorite things to watch on TV?
Well, that's hard because I had my parents, looking back, I love it. At the time, I didn't. We were allowed 1 hour of television a week. So it was very, very regulated. And I was not allowed to watch most of the things that my friends were watching. So, which is funny because my parents were very hands off my whole life, other than this one area. So when I was really little, there was this show on PBS called Magic Garden.
Oh, sure.
And puppets. I loved that.
With the chuckle patch, if I remember correctly.
Yes. And yeah. So, I ended up with a lot of PBS shows, but I will say the one thing that I I think because I wasn't supposed to, when I could sneak in some daytime soaps when I was a teenager, like General Hospital was my favorite. So,
I was a CBS man, so I was all over
uh,
Guiding Light and As the World Turns. These were all ones that I used to watch with my grandmother. Um, but yeah, it was Guiding Light, As the World Turns. Young and the Restless was there. Bold and the Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm revealing way too much about myself. Now, if you could have watched other TV shows, what
Oh,
are some of the shows that your friends were watching that you didn't get a chance to see?
Happy Days was the big one. That was on Tuesday nights and Wednesday morning. Everyone was talking about it, and I didn't watch it. I wasn't allowed to watch it. So that was a big one. For whatever reason, when the movie Grease came out, I wasn't allowed to see Grease, which is so weird because my parents are super like left-wing liberal. I don't know what was going on there, but anyway, those were the things I missed out on that I was very fired up about. So
Wow. I will say I did love the Fonz when I was a kid. Like I literally had a picture of Henry Winkler in my room as a kid because my brother and I have a twin brother Jimmy. We thought he was the coolest thing on two legs.
yeah, yeah.
But and I
Well,
still
when
and I still love Henry Winkler, by the way.
yeah, he's fun character. When you say posters, though, it does remind me of two other shows: Battlestar Galactica
Oh,
with
sure.
Starbuck. I had
Yeah.
his Dirk Benedict
Dirk
poster.
Benedict, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I had strangely what something in this is why it's so weird with my parents, but I did watch Charlie's Angels, which why couldn't you watch anyway? I think because my dad liked Charlie's Angels, so I was allowed to watch that. And I had a Farrah Fawcett poster in my room too. So strange stuff. But yeah, there you go.
There you go. How about music? What did you listen to when you were growing up?
Well, teen idol was Rick Springfield. That was my heartthrob. I had many Rick Springfield posters in my room, knew all those songs, still know all those songs. A little like Bon Jovi. I love Bon Jovi. Um, those are probably my favorite of that time period. Oh, Donnie and Marie Osmond. I was very into Donnie and Marie, I have to
Yeah,
say.
that's quite the spectrum you have there. Donnie and Marie,
I'm
Rick
very
Springfield.
eclectic. We were very into like show tunes in my household. So a lot of like cast recordings of things. I had a lot of that going on.
There you go. Yeah. Did you get to see the recent? I think it's a four-part documentary on Bon Jovi that he put together.
I did. I wrote a blog about it.
Yeah, it was. I
Uh,
thought it was really good.
it was really good. It was very good. Stuck with me a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad they got Richie Sambora in there too.
I
Given
know.
the
I know.
history, that was great that they gave him some time in that.
Definitely. It wouldn't have really been a complete documentary of Bon Jovi if you didn't have Richie in there.
No,
So
no, he was instrumental to their sound. His background vocals, his songwriting, and his guitar tone is definitely a memorable player in the '80s, guitar player in the '80s and '90s.
yeah.
So, oh, very
Yeah.
good. So, one last question I have for you would be, if you could go back in time and whisper something into the younger Holly's ear, maybe it's that younger Holly who could only watch an hour's worth of TV every week. What would you tell that younger Holly?
Well, I will answer, but before I answer, I'm going to say there's this Anna Quinlan has a great like in one of the essays she wrote, she talks about this very question that people ask her, and her answer is always that she wouldn't bother because the younger version of herself wouldn't listen to her older self, which I find entirely true. So it wouldn't matter what I said to my younger self. So, but then I will actually answer your question, even though my younger self wouldn't listen. About the TV, I would say you're way better off without that. But again, she wouldn't listen to that. So I mean, I think I would love to tell my younger self not to worry so much, but I'd probably like to tell my current self that too. And I don't really listen now either. So we'll see.
There we go. It's a moot point, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, Holly, where can people pick up a copy of All I Know?
Anywhere books are sold, you can get a copy. You can check out my website, which is hollyclabarbera.com. And you can buy it through bookshop.org from my website, or directly from bookshop.org, or again, anywhere that you buy books. But also on my website, I have blogs and different things you can take a look at if you want to get a feel for other things I write.
Well, I, for one, I'm going to check out the Bon Jovi one.
Yeah, it's called Welcome to Wherever You Are. That's the name of that blog. So, yeah.
Very cool. And then are you active on any social media? Do you have any handles you can share if people want to follow
I am.
you?
It's I'm on Instagram at Holly Tells a Tale, all one word. And on Facebook, I'm Holly LaBarbera. So
All right. I will be sure to put all of that in our show notes so people can easily just tap on their screens and find you. Holly, thank you so much for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.